Peace to the family. Welcome to another episode of We Charge Colonialism podcast and book club. I am Kimba, moderating We Charge Colonialism podcast and book club. Also a member of the International People's Democratic Uhuru movement, as well as Abundance and Ujamaa movement out in New York, and among other things. But y'all want to introduce yourselves?
Peace, everyone. I'm Natasha. I am an educator, community organizer, member of the Northeast Political Prisoners Coalition, and happy to be here with y'all this Saturday morning.
Peace, everyone. This is Frank, host for the Revolutionary Repatriation Educational Lecture Series.
All right, so we are your team this morning. A lot to talk about. We are still reading the ISIS papers. This will be a second week covering the ISIS papers. The keys to the colors by Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. I'm mad that we missed last week. I mean, I was going down to DC, but I found out it was Dr. Welsing's born day. It would have been a great day to do the show on the 18th. But, here we are. It's all good. But happy belated born day to Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. So it's fitting that we are covering her work. The first half of our podcast, we like to do our weekly roundup. But before we get into that, I want everybody to make sure that you like and share this podcast and book club, like and share. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel, make sure you subscribe to our channel. We Charge Colonialism. Most of the work that we do is in media, but our purpose and mission is to bring awareness to the colonial situation that Africans are facing every day, every single day of our lives, all of the struggles, all of the things that we face on a daily basis is because of colonialism. And the only way that we can liberate ourselves is to acknowledge the condition and position that we are in, and organize towards revolution, organize towards Black liberation. But before we get into the weekly roundup, there's a lot going on, in the community. And I know the brother Omawali Africa out of Philadelphia, where I'm based at, has put out a couple of articles in response to what has been going on in the Black community here in the States, where a lot of division is being sown. And I know, Natasha, you came across one of those articles and wanted to speak to that. So we're going to discuss that before we get into our weekly roundup.
Yeah, peace. So yeah, I agree with you. I think that there is I don't know, I guess in this particular time and moment, but we've always had, throughout the history of our struggle, forces that would seek to, divide us as a people from our mission of liberation, of, a Pan-African unity, of Black people reclaiming our rightful place within the world as sovereign people. And I think that this particular thing is no different. So when we know here, within the United States, there's what they call the FBA, which is the Foundational Black Americans, I think, they call themselves. But also there is, the ADOS movement, I forget what it's called, African descendants of slaves. So we have all of these things, and it's
American descendants.
Yeah, American descendants. Oh, they probably would kill me for saying that, but
yes, they would.
But yeah, so I think and this goes back to, this ties a lot with reparations and money and material benefits. And so I think because we understand, and because people, I forgot what quote it was, but there's a quote that talks about, and I should have looked it up, but it's only coming to me now. It says something loosely people are not fighting for, ideas, people are fighting for material benefits. And we understand that when we think about colonialism, those material benefits that are being extracted from our communities, extracted from our countries, extracted from the land, are those same things that people are fighting for, because we know that Europeans and white supremacy and colonialism, that is what they did, and that is what they continue to do. Go to places where, you know, African people are and extract these material resources so that we're left clamoring and fighting amongst each other for the crumbs of those material resources that are left. And so this article that Brother Omawali brought up, I'm going to that he wrote in response to some of these things that have been going on, and also like placing placing it in front of us for us to realize, because I think a lot of the things that are going on, we don't really necessarily know to what level they're being done. And so I want to just like point out a particular piece where he's talking where he mentioned how the this, you know, these movements as such as the FBA and the ADOS and things like that have been attacking Pan-Africanism, right? The very thing that has led us to even the point that we are in right now, in terms of like, you know, the advances African people have made across the world. And that's, you know, been through us connecting and unifying. And but there's, you know, been an attack on on Pan-Africanism as something that people should abandon, as something that's dead, as if there is no international struggle, no international unity, no international case for African people to be made for African people. And I think it's really, really detrimental to the work that we are doing here. And, you know, when we think about We Charge Colonialism, but also the work that we do in our everyday lives, as, you know, with the organizations that we're part of, and, you know, the education movements that we're working to make and create for our people. And I think they're using the miseducation of our people, the miseducation that the United States has been levying upon Black people in general. They're using that to their advantage, particularly like Tariq Nasheed, who's one of these like really strong proponents of this whole FBA thing. So I'm just going to share this quick thing. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So share screen, and then I'm going to go to the window. So I'm just going to read this really quickly, and then, you know, you guys can, you know, give your thoughts on what it is. So if you just go ahead and pull it up. So I think this here is key what's being said. So he points out this Garvey quote, which I think is a really good quote for that allows us to think about all of this. Like, for us as a race to remain as we have been in the past, divided amongst ourselves, paralyzing, insuralizing, and nationalizing our activities as subjects and citizens of the many alien races and governments under which we live, it is but to hold ourselves in readiness for the great catastrophe that is bound to come, that of racial extermination at the hands of the stronger race, the race that will be fit to survive. And so here he's just talking about how there's all of these attacks on Pan-Africanism, you know, where Tariq Nasheed goes on to say in a video, I guess, African Americans have been supporting Black immigration. However, African Americans can't get citizenship in European owned African nations on the continent. Therefore, Pan-Africanism is one-sided and only supports Black immigrants. And as such, Black Americans should stop supporting immigration by abandoning Pan-Africanism. And then he even goes on to talk about how Tariq Nasheed talks about Marcus Garvey, and he ridicules Pan-Africanism as a Wakanda fantasy and informs his audience that that information is now, quote unquote, coming out to talk about Marcus Garvey being a, quote, op of the, you know, or an enemy of African people. I mean, just the things that you know, this whole idea of Pan-Africanism is dead, that they've been talking about, and the way that like Pan-Africanism is being downplayed, and like mimicked and mocked as if it's something that is, you know, do y'all think these folks are down with all that Pan-Africanism we keep hearing about? So it's like, I think as I was saying before, it's really important for us to like take note of this, because it's clear that like an example for like Tariq Nasheed is someone who we know of as in the past of like creating hidden colors and having um, done all this work around highlighting African history and Pan-Africanism, a lot of work around Pan-Africanism, going across the world to places where African people are, to do this work, and to now be demonizing the work that we do and the work our ancestors have done, and demonizing our ancestors is, like, it makes me think about this another quote that I think it was Mfundishi who had said at one time, like, there's a difference between a warrior and a mercenary. And so he said, warriors, they'll fight for you and defend you, but a mercenary, they'll fight for anyone and they can be bought. Warriors can't be bought, but mercenaries can. And so I think in the case of, like, let's say Tariq Nasheed, for example, and what, he's been doing in terms of attacking Pan-Africanism and the way that he's done and the way that he was a proponent of Pan-Africanism before, is that specific example that, you'll fight for Black people and Pan-Africanism when it's beneficial to you, when you can get paid off of it. And then as soon as you can get paid from something else or another entity, you will fight for that. And I think that is exactly what is happening. And I think we need to be clear of who are our warriors and who are the mercenaries that are pretending to be warriors within our struggle for liberation. So yeah, so if you guys have any thoughts on this whole thing and all this stuff that's going on, you can give your 2 thoughts or your 2 cents.
No, appreciate that. I have some thought. Frank, did you want to add something?
I mean, what the art is that Natasha said everything, right. Sometimes for me, my frustration is, I don't see any reason why there will be a Black movement or a Black struggle or organization that think they are speaking for Black, or they are on the movement for Black people, and then there is another organization that is also on the same path of movement, seeking Black liberation, and then there's an entity of a Black organization going against that entity. Okay, and when we both are fighting the same system, and when we both are being oppressed, by the same system. So I don't know. Black people always do that. Mostly, it's Black people who always go against Black organization. There's no way you're going to see a Black, let's say a white. Sorry, folks. There's no way you're going to see a white organization, all right, fighting for their interests, for the same interests, and then you see that white organization going against another white organization that is being oppressed, by the same people. Only Black people do that, which is very frustrating. Like, when I see another Black organization talking against Pan-Africanism, like Pan-Africanism is there, it was never fruitful. But sometimes I ask myself, have you taken your time to do actual research, okay, and understand how far Pan-Africanism have come, how it started, and what they have done, okay, what they have done in the struggle, even before somebody was born, what they have done, what it stood for. And now we came into this war, and what they struggle for, we are also struggling on the same thing. And the same people that oppress them, enslave them, colonize them, it is the same people that is still enslaving us, that is still colonizing us, that is still oppressing us, right? The same descendant. So sometimes it baffles me to see another Black organization doing these things. And I think sometimes they got to stop it. I don't know. I don't know what they are fighting for, but I don't know how better can I put that. But
No, absolutely. And as y'all were speaking, I'm just thinking of how these opportunists are coming in and taking advantage of the miseducation. I think, Natasha, you had stated something that made me think about Carter G. Woodson, and I wanted to just pull this up really quick to show, what has happened in our community to make us vulnerable to these people who come into our community that look like us, speaking as if they're working in our interests, but really they're just for their own personal gain and personal benefit. Because what I see, if these is people, if they really cared about black folk, um, they wouldn't be attacking other black folk unless it came with it. We call out contradictions in regards to black folk, but we had terms. We look at the neo-colonialists. We look at people who are the black bourgeoisie who are working in the interests of white power, that can come in, that can be of any background, whether they're from the continent of Africa or here in the United States. Here in the United States, we deal with a black folk that may be what they call descendants of slaves every day in Philadelphia. These people, mayors, city councilmen, these aren't people that are from the continent. These aren't people that are from the islands that are exploiting the community and working with white power, right? So it comes in many forms, and we have people who are neo-colonialists and traitors to the revolutionary struggle, the black liberation, traitors to black liberation, who are from all different parts of the world. But in regards to what's happening in the United States, right? I'm going to pull this up and just look what Carter G. Woodson said in his 1933 publication, The Miseducation of the Negro. This is chapter 1. The first thing he says, look, chapter 1, see the trouble. The educated Negroes have the attitude of contempt toward their own people, right? These are the folks that we're talking about right now, toward their own people, because in their own, as well as in their mixed schools, Negroes are taught to admire the Hebrew, the Greek, the Latin, and the Teuton, and to despise the African. This is Carter G. Woodson, African American, the founder of Black History Month, who's given us these jewels. Now, these people, have they read The Miseducation of the Negro? Probably not. Some of them probably have, but again, like they are opportunists. And to be honest, I don't know if some of these people who are supposed to be the leaders of these organizations, they always claim that they used to be Pan-African in this, but I don't think that they read these works, not having the thoughts that they have. Last thing, Kwame Nkrumah. This is someone else that they don't read. This is from Africa Must Unite, and it's speaking to the same topic. So this is Africa Must Unite by Kwame Nkrumah. This is chapter 18, Neo-Colonialism in Africa. Neo-colonialism in the United States.
Right.
This is how we have to think about it. The greatest danger at present facing Africa is neo-colonialism and its major instrument, balkanization. The latter term is particularly appropriate to describe the breaking up of Africa into small, weak states, since it arose from the action of the great powers when they divided up the European part of the old Turkish Empire and created a number of dependent and competing states in the Balkan Peninsula. Right, so that's the strategy they use. We know that Rome used the strategy of divide and conquer, and when we see Black people coming into our communities and trying to divide Black people on the basis of where Black people are from, then we notice, that these people aren't really there in the interest of Black folks, because we know that the enemy is white power. If we know that the enemy is the European who abducted Africans and brought them to the Americas and then colonized Africa, and we understand that these are the people who are still in positions of power today, and everything that the African working class is, because that's the masses of people, the African working class, right? Who need a working class ideology, right? Rather than a bourgeois ideology of the European, right? Those are the people that we need to be organizing, uniting against a global system. And so we from the tradition of Malcolm X, the Malcolm X's, the Dr. Amerson Wilsons, Dr. John Henry Clark's, and so forth. And we can go on and on. These people right here, who are we listening to Malcolm? Or are we listening to people like Tariq Nasheed? Are we listening to what Dr. Amerson Wilson has produced and given to us? Or are we listening to these people who are in these communities trying to divide us? So I know that was a lot, but this was a serious topic, I think, that needs to be discussed.
Yeah.
And I support Omawali Africa. And I don't know him that well, but I've met him, been in circles a few. When you in this work, you cross paths. But I've seen him in the community, doing work, and I know what he represents. So he has all the support over here. But yeah.
Yeah, same. And I would definitely tell people to check out his channel and check out the article that he's written in past articles. He gives real analysis, and he's, from what I know of him, and knowing him, and speaking to him, and being in the same spaces as him from time to time. When we think about people who are really doing the work, he's really doing the work in the community. I think is a difference between people, being up on social media all the time and saying things and talking all the time, and people actually being within the community and actually doing sincere community work. And he's one of those who's doing sincere community work.
For sure. So, I'm glad we took time to have this discussion. It is something I wanted to talk about for a while, but
I didn't really know about it. So, because I'm not on Twitter or social media too much, or from time to time I would come on YouTube, but it's mostly because I'm just so busy with school, and so I'm not keeping up on everything. So it was, and so I think it's also because he's got all this information, and he's put it together really well so that you can follow what's happening.
It's really, I don't know how bad, the average, I think, person on the streets don't know what's going on, but there is a contingent of folks that are organized and causing ruckus all throughout social media, and it's a bad reflection on the community, because in the community, those conversations, you go outside the door and you speaking to folks, those conversations aren't being had. And when people are really organizing and doing something in the interest of Black folks, those conversations aren't being had. It's what can we do for the community? So, this thing on social media, though, is people who are making it, these people, immigrants, are the problem. This is, it's just ridiculous, and that's the attack on Pan-Africanism comes about through really an attack on immigration. And they're so that's the connection right there. So it's all right, they're really attacking immigration, which is coming from the European, that's European ideology and so forth. These people come and taking our jobs, and that isn't an African, way. For one, because of the history over here, coming over here as second class, being enslaved, being second class citizens, and still to this day not really having the rights that should be afforded us, or there was never any amends or reparations given. So we're still struggling against this power structure. So we don't have time to be, looking to align ourselves with the power structure against our own people, brothers and sisters. It's ridiculous. And so there can be a critique on anybody that's working with white power. But what we have to do as African people is organize. We have to organize other Africans against the power structure, because everybody is just trying to survive. There's a lot to be said. I don't, taking up a lot of time. Yeah.
There's so much said, yeah.
We probably could do a whole podcast on for real. Appreciate that, Conrad. So the other thing, I'm not going to get into my story. I'll probably save my story for next week because it can be talked about. But anybody that is interested and want to look into it, Chad has nationalized its oil. There was ExxonMobil tried to sell their oil to the Savannah Energy, which is based in London. ExxonMobil, of course, is an American based company. who's incorporated in Jersey. They operate out of Texas. And I wanted to talk about how, corporate colonialism. These European Americans, they sell into each other to have control over African resources. But I'm going to say that story. Frank, go ahead. I'm gonna let you go.
All right, man. So let's go to Haiti. All right, because Haiti going to be with us for a very long time. Okay, until Haiti can be liberated. So there's an article that came out from the United States changing its plan. So I don't know if you all can remember. I did a report on Haiti a couple of weeks ago, and it was about the CARICOM, the Caribbean nations, and along with Canada coming in to sponsor the Caribbean nation to go into Haiti to train the police, not the army, but to train the police in order for the police to fight the gang. So what happened here is the United States have looked at it critically because the United States does not want to send any Marine in there because the possibility is that, few Marine going to be killed. So they do not want for any U.S. Marine to, lose their life in Haiti, okay, on Black folks. So I'm just going to read here and then I'll connect the dot of what I want to say. So it says U.S. shift to support peacekeeping mission in Haiti after putsch for intervention flutter. So it says here, the Biden administration is shifting its strategy on Haiti away from a proposal from a multilateral armed force that would have had the power to combat gang in the street of Port-au-Prince to a push at the United Nations for a more traditional peacekeeping mission. Three sources familiar with the matter to McCarthy and the Miami Herald. So in this article here, I'm not going to read the whole thing, it's too long, but in this article here, the United States was depending on Canada from the result of the meeting Canada had with the Caribbean nation. So the United States was hoping on that meeting result to see how they can fund that movement of how they can fund the police to go and fight the gang. But it seems that that is not going to happen. So the United States rather began to put the blame on Canada, that Canada did not really force the deal through. So in nutshell, what happened here is the United States does not want to go in because she has been in there before and never brought peace. The United Nations have been in there before as well and never brought peace. So what happened here is the U.S., like I said, does not want to send her military in there before somebody get killed. Okay, so what they wanted to do was to train the Haitian people, okay, the Haitian police. Meanwhile, the Haitian police will not be able to fight again to end the conflict in Haiti. So they want to create a proxy war, actually, because if the United States go in, they have to give time as to when they can fight again for the gang to for that issue to be resolved so that they can have election. If Canada send army in, the same thing. So they have to give time. So they are not going to allow them to be in there for a year fighting again when United States have the equipment and every equipment or machinery to fight again. Canada to do the same thing. So they don't want that. So they want for the Haitian citizens themselves to fight among one another. And then as they continue to support the gang, because the United States is not going to be there to fight again and then at the same time supporting the gang. So if they can train the police while the police be there as a fake army fighting again at the same time, these same foreign entity supporting again with army ammunition, the conflict going to be there. So there will be no peace, there will be no election, because conflict going to be there. But it's going to be on the media that the United States is supporting the police, or Canada is supporting the police to fight again, as the same thing they do in Africa, create a proxy war, but at the same time support the rebel or the gang or the terrorists. That's the same thing they want to do in Haiti. All right. So once that happens, and then they will sit back and relax while the conflict go on, while they continue to loot and exploit the people resources, and there will be no peace. So this is where now they are right now, because it's not holding, and that's a tactic they want to use. Okay, because once they do that, then they will sit back, relax, and they will be like the Haitian are fighting the gang, but peace is not taking place. Peace is not happening. The United States is happy, Canada is happy, but that's the tactics they want to use. They don't want to go in, because if they go in, they have to give time. Well, they will be what to fight again and for election to take place, and they don't want for election to take place either.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Go
No,
ahead.
I was just gonna say, I would just add, just to what you were saying, Frank, other examples that we need to look at in terms of these tactics that they've done before, when these fake peacekeeping missions and these fake training missions, where they've done it again in South America. We've seen it in the Middle East, the same way that they go in and do these quote unquote fake peacekeeping missions or these training missions, but really what they're doing is creating more cells that they can control and use to create more instability. So I just wanted to add that to it.
Yeah, and just to add to that, because you touched on the disruption that's taking place, and when we look at the motivation behind it all, I mean, this is colonial capitalism at its best. It creates this division, it creates this chaos, but there's also for the colonizer, there's economic benefit to it, especially in this day and age where they can cause this chaos, and then because of the dependency that usually these colonized nations or impoverished nations, because of the condition that they are in, they need to seek in this dependency, they need to seek help from foreign powers. And usually these foreign powers that they have to go to are the very same states that are causing the disruption, that's causing the chaos in the first place. And so now they come in and they're able to gain control over certain institutions and have certain influence in the country because of the dependency that the subjected nation has on them. And so this is how you have neo-colonialism. And the other thing is that there's resources, there's industries are made through, believe it or not, when they create this chaos and they create poverty, they can create a market out of all of that. And they can actually go to, and we all know they can go to agencies, international agencies or state agencies, and get taxpayers' money. They can get resources to be able to quote unquote solve problems in these nations, which they never solve the problems, because without the problem, there's that money flow is not going to continue to come in. Right. So, I mean, it's a whole conversation to be had about that, but this is colonialism and neo-colonialism at its best. So, yeah, appreciate you bringing this story. It's 10:34, so we're going to transition to our book reading. I put our Google Drive in the chat for those who want to read along with us. We're on page 3 of the ISIS papers, still in chapter 1. I didn't want to skip forward to chapter 2 because I felt like last time we were reading, we were really getting into it, and there was just some things that Dr. Chris Wilson is going to touch on that I wanted to address in this podcast. So before I do that, I'm going to pull it up on the screen. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Make sure you like and share, subscribe, family, peace, uhuru to everyone. that's tuning in and being a part of these discussions, tuning in week after week. Always appreciate you. Okay, pull that up. It's on the screen. All right, so I'm on page 3. Yeah, at the top. Hey, it's say, you know, I'm doing the sorry, I'm doing the production thing. I want to get that weekly roundup out of it. Give me 1 second. Here we go. Here we go. Now I can move forward. So right at the top, Fuller explains that racism is not merely a pattern of individual and or institutional practice. It is a universally operating system of white supremacy and domination in which the majority of the world's white people participate. He discounts the validity of theories that recognize the evolution of economic systems as the origin of this state of affairs. Instead, he reveals the inadequate analysis of such theories by suggesting the various economic systems, such as capitalism, communism, and socialism, have been devised, used, and refined in an effort to achieve the primary goal of white domination. I kind of want to go back to this part right here. I want to go back to this part. So keep that in mind. I just wonder what people's thoughts are around that statement right here. So, you know, these systems have been devised, used, and refined in an effort to achieve the primary goal of white domination. In other words, the goal of the white supremacy system is none other than the establishment, maintenance, expansion, and refinement of world domination by members of a group that classifies itself as the white race. Fuller then suggests that the word race, in this sense, has little biological validity, but is translated more correctly as organization, the sole purpose of which is to maintain white domination and world control. Fuller's emphasis on the concept of color amplifies the assertion made in 1903 by W.B. Du Bois, perhaps the greatest American social scientist, in The Souls of Black Folk, that the great problem facing the 20th century is that of the color line. Whether or not one is emotionally comfortable with Fuller's thesis and assessment, it is not germane. The question of such comfort never has been the important concern of scientific investigation. Of great significance in Fuller's work is the description of relationships between non-white and white peoples. Fuller defines and elucidates these relationships as a means of accounting for and illuminating many past and present observable social practices. Also, this examination reveals that despite all kinds of programs and pronouncements to the contrary, for the past several hundred years, white supremacist social conditions have remained intact as the dominant social reality. Impressed that the concept of a system of white domination over the world's non-white peoples could explain the seeming predicament and dilemma of non-white social reality, I tended to focus as a psychiatrist on what possible motivational force, operative at both the individual and group levels, could account for the evolution of these patterns of social behavioral practice that apparently functions in all areas of human activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. While Fuller clearly suggests that this system consists of patterns of thought, speech, and action practiced to various degrees by the majority of the world's white people, the only comment on ideology he makes is that most white people hate Black people. The reason that most white people hate Black people is because whites are not Black people. If you know this about white people, you need no little else. If you do not know this about white people, virtually all else that you know about them will only confuse you. Want to stop? Did y'all have any thoughts on that before I move forward? I don't want to go too far away.
I know you want to go back to the. Oh, sorry, Frank. No, I was.
No, go ahead.
I know you wanted to go back to the quote, so I didn't know if you wanted to go back to that quote before we something else.
Yeah, well, if you had any thoughts on the quote, I guess, yeah, I was just wondering, because I have some thoughts in regards to he says that uh, he discounts the validity of theories that recognize the evolution of economic systems as the origin of this state of affairs. Instead, he revealed. I think like oh well, he's talking about the theories, right? But just taking the theories out of it, I think the origin of the state of affairs is is an economic system, though. I think that there were theories that developed later to describe the economic systems. So you have to separate the theories. Well, I mean, you shouldn't, but just for the sake of conversation, I want to just like take the theories of communism, socialism, capitalism, all of that out, and just say like, there were these systems that were in place that were the origin of the state of affairs today. So he says economic systems, such as capitalism, communism, socialism, have been devised. Which, yes, they, the theories itself, but it was based on material conditions. I think used and refined in an effort to achieve the primary goal of white domination. And so I'm taking it that he's saying that these theories have been devised. Um, I don't know, to confuse, right, or mislead people in regards to like the goals is capitalism, develop and sustain capitalism, or the goal is to create communism and socialism. But really the primary goal is to achieve white domination, which I don't know if I fully agree with that. I think like I think white domination is a reality. I think that racism is a reality, but I think it comes from uh, before there was this concept, because even here he talks about white being an organization. Before this concept of white, uh, there was this struggle for me is power. At the end of the day, like how do we explain other white people exploiting, oppressing, colonizing other white people? Is their ultimate goal white power when they were doing this to each other, or was the ultimate goal power? Does that make sense? Now I can see it developing into something today where it's like, we can use this concept, because to me the white is an ideology, using this ideology, this concept, as a way to manipulate people into thinking like, oh, it's about white power. But I think like the ruling class, the people who are definitely like, it's just this need to just control and have power over all non-white people, but even other white people, control and manipulate them. So I think that causes confusion as well. But if y'all had any thoughts,
Yeah, let me add to what you guys just said, and also to a comment here from Maurice, and which is true. I just want to build on what he said in relating to the reading in there, where the reading says that racism is universal. So he says here, look at racism, look at racism, look at racism as not being personal, but rather as being business. Look at it as a strategy to ensure global white supremacy. And absolutely, and this is what exactly we are saying, and that's why the book even mentioned it, that it's a universal thing. Okay, it is a universal system. Okay, and that universal system is not in any way for black people. It is a system for white people. All right, once it comes to black, it is a system that is for white people. And what the book is saying here, how do you call it, as well as saying that white people hate black people. I know that is a powerful word. When you say out there, you just go out there and say white people hate black people, they might laugh at you or say that, what do you mean white people hate black people? But the reality here is, it's true, because white supremacy, it never work against white people. It always go against black people, black struggle, black identity. It don't go against white identity. And when we say white supremacy, is against black people, it is a truth, because and when we say white hate black, it is a truth, because there's no time in history where we have black supremacy that go against white people, that oppress white people. There's no time in history, but there is time in history leading to current time that white ideology have always been against black people. There's no time in history, in current time, that white ideology is favoring black people, liberate black people, empower black people. White ideology have always, and it is always there to oppress black people, not to liberate black people. And that is what make it universal, and that is what make it white supremacy, because it is always not in our interest. It always bring black people down, no matter where we are on a continent, whether no matter how we are in the world. It is an agenda that always oppress and bring down black people, talk down on black people, imprison black people, okay, dehumanize black people, and that is why it's hateful. So when black people say white hate black, it is real, because there's no time in history you will say black hate white. We have always been peaceful. In fact, when you call a meeting and say, oh, there's a meeting that involves all black people, you won't really see black people there to come and fight or to come to that meeting. But the moment you say it's going to be black and white, you're going to find a lot of black people there because you mention white. I don't know where that love comes from. And this is not about, I'm saying to say black people should hate white people, but we're just speaking the obvious that white people always come out with. There's no agenda white people bring out always favor black people, but there have always been an agenda that black people will bring out, which is universal, that white people also benefit from it, just how black people benefit from.
Yeah, and I think I would add on to that a little bit in terms of this idea that Neely Fuller puts forward, that Francis Cress Welsing mentions here, that Frankie was just speaking on. And one of my favorite quotes is by Kwame Ture, who says that, if a white man wants to lynch me, that's his problem. If he has the power to lynch me, that's my problem. And so, thinking about this idea of power, as Brother Akimba mentioned before, and how, when you're within this system of oppression, within this system of white terror and domination that white people have created, you have this power dynamic where, of course, they have, the power when it comes to economics, the political systems, because all of these systems that we live within have been created to maintain their power, but also to advance their power. But at the same time, we know that we've been, using the power that we still inherently have to free ourselves from this diabolical system that we're in this continuous war that we find ourselves in, that we've been in for a long time. And so thinking about that, and thinking about the Kwame Ture quote when it comes to the ideology, and I think the quote that Brother Akimba was talking about before, the idea that Neely Fuller was also saying about where is, we can't just look at these theories of communism and capitalism and socialism as the reasons as to why this system exists in the way that it does, right? That like capitalism is what made Europeans start to do these types of things. And I think that's what he was, I think to me, what that statement that he made about, that you read before, Akimba, about these theories, being inadequate to analyze this present condition of white domination, suggesting that it's coming from something else. Like, it's not just purely economic, because you could believe that you're better than other people. Like, let's say, when the people talk about like nationalism, or where they talk about ethnocentrism, or whatever those terms are they want to use, or even when people break racism down to as just being, you thinking, being racist means that you think you're better than somebody else, as simple as that. But we know that it's much deeper than that, right? This idea is like, you can think you're better than somebody else, but that doesn't make you decide that you're going to create a whole system to dominate every other people that are not you. That doesn't mean that you're going to go out and commit mass genocide in every part of the world in order to do that. It doesn't mean that you're going to go every single place and claim any land and destroy any land that exists. And so I think that's, what I think Neely Fuller is getting at, is that, like, to simply bring it down to these economic processes, or to simply say that it's because of these economic relations or economic goals of Europeans, misses something, that it's inadequate, right? It doesn't do enough. It doesn't explain it enough, because it's more than just the economics of it. Because it's like, okay, you can want economics, but then at the same time, other nations and other groups of people around the world, they also, are looking for their material conditions. They also may fight within their own for material conditions within where they live as well. And they also have gone out before Europeans to explore the world and interact with other groups of people. But there was not this system of domination and terror and mass genocide, not only to people, but to animals, to plants, to the land itself. I mean, to everything. That you can't explain when it comes to just, you can't just bring down to purely economics. And so I think that's what he was saying. And I think that's what underlies this statement that Neely Fuller goes on to say, this idea that, most white people hate Black people. And therefore, like, if you see that, and if you analyze it more, if you go deeper into and go beyond this, obviously this is just a simplistic statement of like, okay, most white people hate Black people, but really, do a more in-depth analysis of what the situation is between, Europeans and Blacks, and therefore Europeans and all other non-Black people, other non-white people. You have to think about, as going back to power, but also to something deeper, like what is, like, the ethos of a people. What is, like, what is their social milieu, like, what is it that makes a people do these just like Bobby E. Wright was talking about in the psychopathic personality. I think all of the social theories have been working to understand why like, what, why to this extent, for this particular situation. I don't even know if I really made a point, but I think these were all things that I was thinking about in terms of the things that were brought up in
Yeah,
this section.
that's funny that you said you don't think you made a point, because I'm sitting here like, that's a powerful ass point. I was about to say, yo, you need to go back, listen to this, and write it up as an article. Because that was a powerful analysis, man. You like, I don't know if I made a point. What? That was, I hope the people really got that. Yeah, I thought that was powerful. I don't even know if I needed to add anything to that. There's some things in the comments. I don't know if people want to address. I can stop sharing my screen, but I definitely like appreciate the breakdown, and you speaking to the analysis, because I think that is the difference between a European analysis and what we should be doing, taking an African-centered analysis and approach, like Dr. Bobby Wright taught us, because that is what happens with the white socialist, communist, well, capitalist. Man, this the system, capitalism itself. Anybody adheres to that theory of exploitation, oppression, I think is crazy. But yeah, but I think you made a powerful point, because with us, it is something we have to look at the psychology of these people who developed a system and decided that people who don't look like us, we're going to create an ideology to put them in the position, not just economically, but just like mentally, so to just create this whole idea of inferiority, of the reason, justifications of the reason why, their land must be taken, the reason why, they are oppressed, enslaved. I mean, they, written books, and they actually justified slavery at a time. So, I think something has developed in regards to, uh, in regards to the psychology of these people, that I still think, I still think it stems from this quest for power. But in this quest for power, and it's going against other groups of people, where at one time it was your own. So, you had to develop an ideology to justify oppressing other people, whether it was religious reasons, spiritual differences, religious differences, color of the eyes, the way their hair look, the way people look, right? These people aren't white enough, to the point where it's like, okay, these people who are Indian Americans, indigenous people, these people in Africa, the Aboriginal people of Australia, oh, look at their skin, they look different than us. And so, yeah, there's something ingrained in their psychology, I think, that has developed and passed on from generation to generation, in which we have to deal with these things today. But Frank, I know did you want to add anything?
Yeah, sure. I just want to build on what Yapa said here. Let me just build on this. So he says, we have always been a peaceful, loving people who sought balance. I did research on devices of torture, and it is an overwhelmingly European phenomenon. No such thing on the continent. It is not our nature. And let me just build on that, or what he said here, because a lot of time, people who write books, especially because they want for it to be approved by European, or they want it to be approved by how they call it, and where the name can come, but they want it to be approved by white people, right? So they go on a continent and they write book, and then they lie in a story. And most of the time, they have written book about Africa, about Asian Africa, and they lie in it. So they always says that African people in Africa, they fought war, or they enslaved their own people, and so forth, and things like when they go to a village, they capture a village, they will kill the citizens, the people. That's not how it happened. First of all, I will make this clear. Before European, or before the 1600, right now, in Africa, at that time, there was no boundary. Before the 1600, there was no boundary. It was just Africa as a whole. So there was kings, there were queens, and people wanted to, how they call it, expand their villages or their town. Well, kingdom was a state, okay? So they wanted to expand. So on a battlefield, they will fight. Of course, if you go on a battlefield to fight, somebody going to die on a battlefield. So now, but the issue here is, for each time, the overshadow or power over another village, when they get to that village, they never just went in the village and then start killing, because they all want a population. So the belief is that if they capture that village and they overtake that village, so that particular village now become part of the other kingdom. All right. So everybody in that village will be under the rule of that kingdom. But there's one thing they didn't do, or there are some things they didn't do. The way of life in that village never changed. That's why in Africa, how they call it, a way of life, we're still the same. People were still practicing their culture. So if I come and in your village and capture your village, I'm not going to force you, okay, to do the way of my people or to learn my language and think. You still going to serve your God, your God that you serve and think. You're still going to serve them. But the only thing is that you're going to respect the rule, the constitution of the village, that you reside on. But you're still going to serve your God. Okay, you're still going to do your family well, but you're going to be honor my kingdom. You're going to be honor my kingdom, honor my constitution, honor my nation. So, and the reason to that was they didn't just go kill people because they were looking for manpower. The more manpower, the more populated your nation or your kingdom is, the more people become afraid of you. That's the time the other kingdom will become afraid of you, because you got manpower to go and fight. So the less manpower you get, the less powerful you become. So those kings and queens, they didn't just go into villages and start killing women, killing children. No, they wanted manpower. They wanted those women to stay. They wanted those men to stay, to procreate, to get more manpower, to go to another kingdom to fight. Unlike the European, for every place they enter, they kill and they destroy. Okay, they kill everybody in there. Okay, they poison everybody in there, kill them, and then take the people land. We know what they did to the Native American here, and we know what they did to Africa. For every places they went, like the Belgian, they start cutting people here out, chopping people neck, killing them. We know what they did to a lot of places in Africa and things. So with the European, it was different. When the European come, they conquer you, they are not going to be part of you, or they are not going to be, I call it, integrate into your system. They're going to wipe your entire kingdom and settle there. That was not like that in Africa. In fact, in Africa, villages that were captured by other kings, those people in that time, they were not slaves. All right. So they lived in that village or in that town. After maybe a couple of months or years, they integrate them into that system. They become part of that system. Okay. And then they even get position. Only that king, they get position. Some of them will even be king, or how they call it, will get some kingship to the king. All right. Because in our village, there are secrets about our village that you know. So the king is not going to go you far or to create enemyship. The king will bring you closer and integrate everybody and give position to everybody to rule that kingdom, to run that kingdom in order to be powerful. Those are the things. That's the ideology of African people. So they didn't just go to villages, they start killing people unlike the European. No.
No, absolutely. I unite with that because there's records of the people who that they colonize, and mind you, they go into these regions where you have African people, or of course, when they came to the Americas, they were the indigenous people of these lands, and there's records of people who came in conflict with them that wasn't used to being in a war or a conflict with another group of people the way that they were with the European, because the European they would not just like fight and kill those people who that they were in direct conflict in regards to the warriors. They were actually like wiping out families. They were killing children, women, and they never seen anything like it. Like they were fighting to actually like wipe out the whole village. And so, yeah, just uniting with what you said in regards, again, just like going to that psychology, and just understanding that history, I think is definitely important. It's any last words? I just want to open it up.
Yeah, I would just make up one last word, I think, just specifically to what Frank brought up and what you were saying. And I think the reason why it's really important for people to understand and learn these ways of other people who are not white is because the way in which Europeans fight and the way in which they see the world has been so universalized that people take their idea and way of doing it and they map it onto history, the history of every other people, to say like, oh, this is, humans, they use that word, humans have always been doing this since the beginning of time. And this idea of since the beginning of time and universalizing the way in which Europeans see the world and the way in which they act has made people think that anytime you bring up the way in which indigenous people of other places viewed war and viewed conflict and even engaged in war and conflict, people paint it as like, oh, that wasn't real. People didn't really do that, because they believe this idea that all people around the world are as vicious and malicious and have the same worldview as Europeans, because it's been so successfully universalized. And I think that's why it's so important for people to understand and come to know, what Frank was pointing out and what you were pointing out, Akimba, about really, like, you have it in Europeans, they love to document when they come and encounter other people who are not them, and would have documented the way in which people, like you said, were doing things completely different, and people refuse and have a hard time believing that there's another way that people engage in conflict, that there's another way that people see war, or even that people can have still have humanity within conflict. And so I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a powerful way to come to a conclusion today, man. I want to appreciate everybody for tuning in. It was his last. Oh man, hold on. Before we close out, man, because I think like this kind of just speaks to a lot of what we were saying. I wanted to get to this part, but let me just read this second sentence. To take fullest account a step further, it should be noted that in a majority of instances, any neurotic drive for superiority usually is founded upon a deep and pervading sense of inadequacy and inferiority. It is not true that white people represent in numerical terms a very small minority of the world people. And more profoundly, it is not white itself the very absence of any ability to produce color. Um, and we'll pick back up on this, but there's there's something that they're seeing in other groups of people that they lack, and I think that also comes to the development of this white supremacy, the idea of white people being superior to other groups of people. But in reality, when they came in contact with the groups in these different places, such as Africa, such as the Americas, at first they talked about the superiority, or they talked about, yeah, the superiority in their culture and ways. It's only when they found interest in controlling the land, the resources, and getting rid of the people that this idea of the inferiority of these other groups came to be a rationale to take over the lands of these people. So, but like I said, we'll pick back up, man. I want to appreciate everybody for joining. Remember to pass on this podcast, like and share, subscribe if you haven't already. We'll be back here at 10 a.m. next week. We missed last week, which was Dr. Frances Cress Wilson. It would have been her born day. Well, it was her born day, but may she rest in power. And that would have been fitting to do the podcast, but definitely appreciate her and the work that she has done. Continue to stay tapped in, continue to organize. And if you're not organized or getting organized, make sure you join the organization because it's not about just having these conversations and deepening our understanding of colonialism, um, of capitalism, is of oppression, of exploitation. It's about us doing the necessary work to overturn our relationship with these colonizers, man. That's the ultimate aim and goal for us, is to liberate ourselves as African people all over the world. So again, appreciate you all. Enjoy the rest of your day. Peace and power.